We're live.
Thank you so much for tuning in to Michael and I as we talk about how to turn your contact center into a revenue center. So, to dive right into it, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Lauren Kindzierski. I am the head of strategy and innovation here at VXI.
I'm Michael Aronowitz, SVP of Revenue Growth here at VXI, and looking forward to taking everyone's questions at the end and speaking to Lauren.
Perfect. So let's jump right in. So, if you think about what has happened in our economy these last couple of years, there's been so much volatility that it's really forced a lot of companies to buckle down and cut costs, which is what's going on rapidly throughout our contact center industry. However, if you think about the flip side of that coin, generating revenue, how do you turn your contact center into a revenue goldmine? If you think about it, there is no better marketing out there than having a conversation with your customers, which is something our call center agents do every single day. And so for Michael and I, this seems like low-hanging fruit. But for others who haven't done it yet, it can seem like a challenge. And that's what we're going to dive into today. And so our first question for you, Michael, is let's kind of jump right on into this. For the listeners who are listening right now, who are sitting there with a contact center of, say, 100 customer care agents who want to empower them to start selling in order to generate revenue, what steps do they need to take?
Great question. First thing you need to do is evaluate your talent to make sure that they actually want to upsell and cross-sell and do those things. Because many of those individuals may have taken a job that doesn't want to be in sales. So the first thing to do is you evaluate your talent and then put a training manual together of how to upsell and cross-sell and do certain things like that. It's not for everyone, but as you said, your revenue center is people, and your best customers are existing customers. You put those two together and do it right, it's a gold mine. You have to look at your contact center as today, it may have cost you $500,000 a month. Next month, it may generate $250,000 for you if you do it the right way.
So let's talk about talent, right? When you think about profiles, is an inbound sales rep profile different than outbound?
Absolutely. So think about an inbound person getting between 20 and 30 calls a day. They're converting at 30%. People are calling you. Outbound is completely different. You may dial 60 to $120 a day and maybe speak to 5 or 6 people. And along the way, have a lot of hangups. And so again, let's look at the profiles that we have. If you hired someone for tech support, they have the solution, then sell. But I'll always go back to your best customers are existing customers. If you become a revenue generation engine, think about your marketing team may have cost you today $111 to acquire a new customer who buys once from you over 18 months. But they may call your contact center 2 or 3 times. You could bring that cost per acquisition down to the low 30s. Think about how many more marketing dollars you would have to go out and acquire new customers. It's balancing the marketing team and the finance team together. Things like that work really well.
So playing devil's advocate for a second, we probably have people that are listening and that are scratching their head saying, can I really take my customer care agents and teach them how to sell? What would you say to them?
I would say that if you have, again, the right profile, the right training material, and there's so many AI tools that you can use these days that can help people get better, faster, and quicker. We used an AI tool that took training to a ramp to proficiency down in 90 days, down to 21. So there are tools that can help people along the way become better sellers much faster.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you this. What about the leadership profile? Does that need to change?
Yes. That's one of the most important points, and I'm glad you brought that up. Being a customer care leader, it's completely different than being someone who's managing upsell and cross-sell programs. Again, when you're driving revenue, you need to be data-driven. You have to understand conversion, cost per sale, revenue per interaction. It's completely different than your contact center scores for care. So again, let's go back to the leader and understand that you can't take your leader in 7 years on a care program and then on Tuesday they're going to be your sales leader. just doesn't work that way. You have to really make sure they know what they're doing. And then as the ladder goes up, so you have your team lead, your ops lead, they also know how to drive revenue.
Yeah, I'll
Really.
also add the right leader. Like a lot of times, the contact center takes on the culture of the leader. And so, if you have a leader who has a sales mentality, you will have a sales culture, one that's focused on power hours and sales huddles and ring the bell every time we have a sale and incentives and bonuses and spin the wheel and recognizing the top sales agent and for the day, for the week, for the hour. Like those are really, really critical components to having a successful contact center that knows how to drive revenue. And so I think when you think about your leadership profile, you should also think about how this person is going to affect the culture. Maybe even in your interview, ask them, like, what would you do to drive a sales culture, and see how they answer it. Would you agree?
Absolutely. Again, when you move from a pure care organization to a revenue-driven organization, all the things you talked about are truly important. You can't give away candy. You got to give away certain cash prizes and things like that. The culture is really important, high-fiving and having boards and who sold and who didn't. Culture drives sales. We all know that.
Yeah. And so let me ask you this too. How do you ensure that these agents don't sound scripted? Because a lot of times people want to buy from people they like and trust. The moment you sound scripted, that's when I'm going to have this kind of like immediate, like, no, thank you. Like right off the bat, I don't even care what you're going to say.
I mean, you don't want to sound like an infomercial. And by the way, Lauren, if you order now, we're going to throw in 2 extra batteries. I mean, it's, again, going back to conversational selling. When the most successful salesperson have listening skills and an understanding, if someone's dialing today and let's just say they're dialing in for a billing or a tech support question, they bought a pair of sneakers, it was the wrong size. If you just at the end say, today we have a promotion for 20% off, most of the time people won't do that. So
Yeah.
I go back to the story of, my daughter played travel softball, needed sunglasses. Of course, you always buy your kid the best. A pair of Oakleys, $99. She has it no longer than 2 weeks. It's broken, right? Stepped on. Back at Sports Authority, buying another pair, $99. Both times as I went to check out, they asked me right off the script, would you be interested in a warranty for $1,295? My answer is no. It's no enthusiasm, whatever, don't need it because you're aggravated. I'm already almost $200 deep. No longer than 3 weeks later, I'm back in Sports Authority. This time, the kid's no more than 16, 17. He reads the warranty information to me, and I say, no, I'm not interested. And bingo, he goes, how often do you buy these? I go, honestly, it's my 3rd pair in less than 2 months. He goes, for $1,295, if they're lost, stolen, broken, yada, 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 you can get another pair. How does that sound? Come again? Yeah, for $1,295. Conversational selling. If the first person would have done that and explained to me, of course I would buy it. For an extra $12.95, $13, I'm already 300 deep. So if you just go off the script, it's not going to work. That's that enthusiasm that you have to bring. But going back to what I said earlier, taking someone and converting them into a seller takes time and effort and training and tools and technology to make sure that you have the right person. It's not for everyone.
Yep. And when you think about tools and technology, our brain instantly is going to turn to data and AI. So how does data and AI play into driving more revenue with each conversation?
So data is, understanding your cost per lead, your cost per sale, revenue per interaction. Data rules in everything. There's certain key components in data of when you could look at. So if today my average handle time is 600 seconds, if I go to cross-selling and upselling, it may go to 900 seconds. Your CFO is going to freak out because my bill went up. But again, going back to what I said earlier, your contact center costs $500,000 a month, but this month it's going to drive $250,000 in revenue. Yes, your average handle time is going to go up, but your average order, your revenue per interaction, we're looking at something that may have cost us $2 a call to now generating $3 per call. So you have to understand data. That's number one. Number two is what tools are you using? to help that conversation, to understand the listening skills? Are you using some training materials to understand that there's certain words, there's certain conversations that drive an opportunity to sell? Can't sell on every interaction. So again, are you doing 2 calls per week per agent? Or are you using interaction analytics, ingesting 100% of the conversations, and then going back and look at what works and what doesn't, when to push and when to pull? Truly important. But again, you have many organizations that want to do 2 calls per week per agent and think that's good, when there's tools out there to take 100% of the interactions and then look at specific keywords that drive sales, specific keywords that do not drive sales. So there's too much noise sometimes out there that we say, oh, we can't do this or we can't do that. Listen to the data. The data will tell you when you're right and when you're wrong.
And data also allows us to personalize those conversations. Going back to not sounding scripted is you really want to truly uncover that person's pain point or their need. And you do that by tapping into the data. What do you know about that customer? How many times have they contacted customer service before? What did they contact about? What did they order? All of those data points can play into helping to figure out what that customer's pain point is, and then using that to personalize it. So I want to jump into, there's so many different aspects of revenue generation when it comes to contact centers. And I want to kind of tap into all of them. There's cross-sell, upsell, there's retention, there's win back, there's direct sales. So I want to start kind of with the low-hanging fruit, which if you're going back to that contact center with 100 agents, we're doing care today, the low-hanging fruit for that individual would be to focus in on getting those agents to cross-sell and upsell. So let's start by, asking you, where do most companies get cross-sell, upsell wrong?
I don't want to sound like a broken record, but it's asking someone today who's taking those inbound calls, whether it's billing, technical support, or something else, to ask them to upsell and cross-sell. And it's not for everyone. Not everyone can sell. There's a fear, and that's why they didn't take a job for sales. So the first place they make mistake is that we're going to take 25 of our best care agents and we're going to move them into upselling and cross-selling for the fourth quarter, for the holiday season. It can drive attrition. It can drive people not coming to work, people who wake up in the morning with butterflies in their stomach who don't want to sell. You have to first go and look at the team and who's qualified to do this. And whether it's through testing or one-on-ones, you have to make sure that the individual wants to do that. The second place they make mistake is that they don't give the training of cross-selling and upselling and listening skills and when to push and when to pull. And the third biggest mistake they do is like, yeah, Lauren, we're going to try this on Thursday. We're just going to, see what happens. The ones that prepare and have a strategy and a plan and put this together are successful. We've put together, you and I, many successful upselling and cross-selling programs. And they all start with something that all has the same thing. What are the goals and what are the KPIs? Do we want to cross-sell on 1 out of 10 interactions, 1 out of 5, 1 out of 3? Are we going to look at the data and say, okay, our average handle time went from 600 to 900 and how much revenue that can drive? The biggest mistake is not having a plan. You don't go and build a house or an addition without plans. You don't start an upsell and cross-selling team without a plan in place with measurable KPIs.
I'm going to add a fourth one.
Sure.
I think another mistake that most companies make is they need to reinforce it to the agents that you have to resolve the customer's inquiry before trying to sell. That is such a big miss. A lot of times if agents jump right into the cross-selling and upselling, but there was no resolution, why they called in to begin with, of course that's going to make an angry customer. Of course that's going to drive down NPS. Of course the customers are going to be frustrated. So resolve. Once that customer is happy with their resolution, then go into cross-selling and upselling using your data, personalizing that dialogue, and focusing in on where you can add value or solve a customer's need or pain point.
When you talk about data, this goes back to something that's truly important. So let's add a fifth point. Measuring the ROI. Because when you start to look at, for example, let's go back to, I bought a pair of sneakers, bought a pair of Hokas, $175. They sent the wrong size. That interaction cost X. But what about when that call comes in and there's a promotion or there's something else that I can upsell and cross-sell another piece of merchandise for an extra $150? Did you measure the $150 in revenue versus the cost per call?
Mm-hmm.
And when you start to look at what I always talk about is lower your cost per acquisition, CPA, but drive more revenue per interaction. Are you measuring the revenue you're driving per interaction? That's where the difference takes place, where people are able to have measurable results, going back to a plan. And when you look at companies who cross-sell and upsell really good, they don't measure average handle time.
Yep.
It's an irrelevant number. The more you talk, the more you sell, the more revenue you drive. It's a hard concept for people to understand who are in CX, who are always trying to drive down talk time, to drive down interactions. I take the other approach. People like to buy from people they like and trust. They like you, they buy more. And who doesn't want a good promotion? If I just spent $175 on a pair of sneakers and I can get a second pair for 50% off, please tell me about it.
Yep.
Everyone loves a coupon. So it goes back to, the earlier mistakes. What do people make? They want you to upsell and cross-sell and still teach the AHT goal at 650 seconds. You can't have both.
Yep.
Because the seller mindset is I'm going to talk and sell. The care mindset is one call resolution, get you in and get you out.
Yep.
It goes back to that profile we talked about.
Yep. And what would you say separates average sales programs from high performing sales programs?
Leadership, what you just talked about earlier. Leadership is the key component in every sales program that performs well has great leaders.
Yep.
They know what it takes to give a hug, a kick, a high five, a push, a pull. Not everyone's the same. You can't manage the floor the same. You have 100 people you just talked about. You got 4 teams, 5 teams. Everyone's different. Leadership is what makes a difference. Great leaders drive great results.
And there are some skeptics out there that are probably thinking, God, cross-selling and upselling can be perceived as annoying for customers. What strategies help make them feel helpful and not pushy?
Conversational selling.
Yeah.
I have a technical question. You call in and I look at your account and there's one iPhone 17, there's one iPhone 16, and there's 2 iPhone 14s. Are those for your kids? Yeah, they are. They were hand-me-downs. Yes, they were. Well, did you realize today that we can upgrade those at no cost to you? I didn't know that. Who wouldn't want to upgrade a free phone?
Yeah.
Again, it's conversational selling. It's looking at what we talked about data. I look at the account. There's 4 lines.
Yep.
There's a newer phone and a newer phone. There's 2 old ones. Look, those old phones have been around 4 years. I'm assuming, let me ask the question, are those phones for your kids? Conversation, they are. Oh, like you didn't want to go out and spend another $1,000 on your kid's phone who's going to lose it or damage it or break it, so you give them the old one. But hey, same conversation around a cell phone is that when they're calling in and there's a problem and it broke and they don't have insurance. They don't want to pay the $19 or $21, but now they're paying the $1,200. Like who would get a cell phone for their kid without insurance? I learned the hard way. Okay. I've purchased many phones because I'm like, they don't need the insurance. It's an older phone. Well, guess what? You can't buy the older phone. You got to buy the new phone when they lose the old phone.
And I think that's part of the training, right? Is training your agents to understand and know which data points to look at. And then when you're looking at the data, what complementary products could help add value, right? And co-pilots could probably even help in this area too, right? We have one particular client with hundreds of model numbers, product numbers, SKUs. So the co-pilot helps figure out which is the best product to cross-sell, upsell. In that case, super helpful because there's hundreds. What else would you say is important from a training perspective when it comes to cross-sell, upsell?
It goes back to what we talked about earlier, is having a strategic plan in place, not being scripted, going through scenarios. So when you talked about AI and co-pilots, before we even get there, what AI tools are we using to help them overcome the objections that may come up?
Yep.
Rather than doing a coaching session, I'm going to coach Lauren and take her on the side for an hour. We have tools today that you don't need a human to coach. We can go sit you in the corner. You can have 5 different scenarios. You can do those 5 scenarios. You can get coached on it, and you can keep taking them over until you feel good. So, I always go back to, it's an old saying, right? People, process, tools, and technology. Well, we talked a lot about people. We talked about process, but what tools and technology are you using today? And if you're not using some of these tools and technology, you may not be right to go into these type of revenue generation. But if you're using them, you could help train people. Again, we talk about a program, right? Rather than taking 90 days to ramp to proficiency, we can get you up in 21 days. That didn't come by people and coaching. That came by tools and technology.
Yep. And those training simulators, having done them myself, like they are good. Like they are really good. You literally feel like you are talking to a customer and it changes dynamically. Like it's different every single time you take it. So it forces you to stay on your toes, and then it tells you afterwards, this is what works. This is, you did a great here. You could do a little better here. And so you get that one-on-one, which kind of plays into my next question around coaching. What does coaching look like in today's day and age with Gen AI? Is it easier? What should contact center leaders look at from a coaching perspective with revenue gen programs?
Stay away from the norms. I run by this all the time. Like, we're going to go coach Michael. Why are you going to coach Michael? Why are you not using a tool to coach Michael? So I think there's 2 schools of thoughts here, right? It's, what are we investing in? Well, we're investing in our people. So how are we investing in them? Did we find tools or training or build them yourselves? But I think there's an investment in your people. And there has to be, traditionally, are we in a 40-hour work week? How much time are we putting away for coaching? 1 hour, 3 hours, 5 hours? Like, how much time are we putting away? And then what type of coaching are we doing, and what tools are we using for that? Going back to, again, what's your plan? And I've seen this so many times in organizations, and you have too, where we can't take people off the phone because we're understaffed and we're super busy. Well, I would argue, again, in any sport, if I go to a basketball game, before the game starts, there's a shoot around. Early in the day, there's a practice. Football, they're practicing, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday for Sunday's game. You got to have practice. You got to put time aside to train the people, not just the agents, but the leaders too. Yeah. And so, when we talk about mistakes, it's not putting time for coaching. And then it's also not having the right coaches. There's a coach for closing. There's a coach for rebuttals. There's a coach for opening, right? There's different types of coaching. Not everybody's great. So find out with your training team or your leader team, who's great at rebuttals, who's great at openings, who's great at listening skills, and have them do that job. But we got to get more people coached up than just thinking that, and the old additive in the old book is, if you do something for 10,000 hours, you become great with outliers. You don't need 10,000 hours anymore to become great. You got some tools that you can do on yourself, on your own to get great. So.
And some of these tools are really, really awesome, where you could search, what can Michael do better on his calls? And then boom, it pulls open your 5 calls of areas where you could do better. And then you push those out, and the agent can listen to the feedback that the Gen AI tool is recommending, with the actual where in the call that they could have done a particular skill or technique. So I think it is getting easier, and definitely more pinpointed to in certain areas. One last question in this particular topic about cross-selling and upselling, which is, what do you say are the best in terms of bonuses and incentives when it comes to selling?
We all know that cash is king, but recognition is sometimes better. Everyone wants to go home and tell their significant other, their partner, their children, their kids, I just came in first place. There's nothing better than going home and saying, I won X. Yeah. Whether that's a trophy, an award, a certificate. I remember, when I was running some contact centers, that we would have the Super Bowl parade of all the winners. We would have banners hanging off the ceiling, who was agent of the month. Everyone knows cash is king, but
Yep.
recognition is better. Who doesn't want to be recognized with the wall of fame, to come in every day and look to the left and see my photo as agent of the month, or a person who drove the highest revenue? Like, we all want to be recognized. There's nothing better than, again, looking up at the left-hand side of the wall and seeing that I was agent of the month in March, in January. So I see we have a question.
Yep. So this one is from Mary, who said, what mistakes do companies make when trying to monetize their contact center too quickly?
Yeah, I think we talked about that. It's going in without a plan. Like, when you don't have a plan, it's too late. And you have to have that plan. So I think it's have a plan, have a strategic plan.
Okay. And so now I want to dive into retention.
Yeah.
Which is another, I think, probably most overlooked, let's say, in terms of generating revenue. So the first question I have is, why is retention such a missed opportunity within contact centers, do you think?
Number one, people fail to realize that retention is the hardest sell of all. Someone decided today that I'm going to call up and cancel.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want your service anymore, for whatever reason. So I have to save that person. And then you want to upsell or cross-sell them something. Going back to, do I have the right profile in place? Being measured on, usually in retention, you measure on save rate. And so they want you to save the person. And after I just spent 20 minutes saving you, oh, and by the way, Lauren, would you be interested in what? So again, when I think of putting the retention program together and upselling and cross-selling, you really have to have someone that has listening skills and empathy to understand that I understand you don't want our product anymore. And you have to understand the reasons why. A good CRM will tell you, I called in 9 times in the last 30 days for a problem and you didn't solve it. Why on earth would you try to sell them something? Like it doesn't make any sense. But someone who has a subscription model and really hasn't used your service in the last 3 months, well, they may not know that certain things are there, or certain usage are there, or things that we can do. So it's really, each individual problem is its own way to look at, do I cross-sell, upsell, retain? But many times, even for retention programs, we don't hire the right profile. It's the hardest sale of all. Someone doesn't want your product anymore. You need someone in there that can articulate the problems, articulate the product, and then give them something that they need, whether that's through a promotion, a free offer, or again, changing the profile that they have and the subscription that they have. Instead of paying $79 a month, I'm going to get you to pay $129 a month after I just called to quit. No way.
Yeah. And we talk about data. So for someone that's never launched a retention program, that's thinking about it, how do you use data to figure out who to proactively reach out to?
Great question. So let's understand why they're canceling in the first place. We have to understand. So first call resolution, third call resolution, fifth call resolution, seventh call resolution. I don't want your service anymore. Why are the reasons? What are the cancellation reasons? Why? Too many times we go and we think, oh, it's the price. It's not necessarily the price, it's the service. So what happened when there was an outage or a problem? Perfect example, I had a refrigerator situation. I pay a warranty. I think it's $13.41 a month. I've been paying for 5 years. Refrigerator breaks on Sunday. I go to use it. They're not open until Monday, 10 o'clock. Why do I have this warranty? Like, what? So I'm ready to cancel. I truly am. Yeah. Because there's no reason to have it that a very reputable company is not open on Saturday and Sunday. Refrigerators break. I want an appointment. I was getting ready to cancel, but their service was impeccable. Mm-hmm. And now I'll buy another warranty from them on other products. So bad experience to a great experience. So yeah, you can upsell and cross-sell me because the experience was great. I think way too many times that we don't put the processes in place to give the customer a great, what we call white glove service experience. You give them a white glove service experience, give them something to come back for, they will. Not most people don't want to, unless it's financial, they don't want to cancel their service. There's a reason why they're canceling, and there's a history behind it. Does your CRM show the reasons why?
Yeah. And I'll also add too, like customers give us all kinds of data signals that they're about to attrit. Things like, I haven't logged into your platform in the last 90 days, 180 days. Like there's a red flag. Or I went from ordering your meal box subscription service every single week to all of a sudden starting to skip weeks. And all of a sudden now I haven't ordered in 3 months, right? Like there are data signals that are out there within the customer journey that are clear indicators that you can start to build predictive models and predict which customers are most likely to attrit. So that's another thing that you could start to look at.
Well, fear plays a big factor in what you just said. So I have the data. Lauren is, a $59 a week subscription model on meals. She pushed it off 2 weeks. Well, if I call her, she may cancel, because we put obstacles in front for you to cancel. I look at it the other way and say, again, let's figure out why you're putting it on hold. Let's be proactive. And maybe you're out of town, maybe you're not, maybe we sent you the wrong meal plan, maybe you're trying someone else's. Like if you don't make that call first, it's going to be a lot harder to save them on the way in. But many companies have the fear of reaching out to Lauren and say, Lauren, you've been a great customer for the last 7 months, and we notice you're not buying right now. Is there something, that's not going right? Now, you may say, well, I've had some delivery problems. You guys came late. The meals were cold. They're not as good. So I put it on hold and I'm trying another provider. How do you overcome that objection? By not having the right person in place. So most people are scared to call someone that's already teetering on cancellation. Well, maybe they'll stay on 1 more week or 1 more month. I don't have to call them yet.
Yeah. And in your opinion, Michael, what's better? Like empowering your retention agents to the fullest potential, do whatever you need to do to save this customer, or giving your retention agents kind of guardrails to stay? Like, here's your 3 options that you can present. Like, have you seen both? Have you done both? Which one works better typically?
There has to be some guardrails in place, because if you give away the store, you give away another free month, history may tell you that they may cancel the following month. So what we talked about earlier is understanding the data, taking interaction analytics of what the problems are and why, and putting that together. There's a lot of data that will show that if you give someone a free month, they may cancel the next month after that because it's free. All right, keep me on for another month.
Yep.
Not really going to use it, but hey, you want to keep me on. So
versus the discounted offer.
Repackaging the monthly subscription and how you're doing it is usually the best way. Free never works. It just doesn't.
Yeah, that's such a good point. So I kind of paying attention to time here. Let's move over to win back, reactivating lost customers. Probably one of the hardest things your agents would ever have to do. So my first question is, what makes a win back strategy successful? What are those key components?
Data, timing, data and timing. We equate this, and we talked about this, a couple of days ago, win back. So I had 5 issues over the last 5 months. I cancel, and now 7 days later, you're calling me up to give me A, B, and C. Why? You didn't solve my problems the last 5 times. Why would I come back to you? So understanding the data of it's really a challenge. Win backs are tough. I'm doing a lot of win back campaigns, and the timing is key to decide when to call, when to push, and when to pull. The biggest factor in win back is understanding the reasons behind your cancellation. And most companies just throw up some data and go smile and dial.
Yep.
And I get Lauren on the phone to try to win you back, and I get run over, bulldozed.
Yeah.
You equate it to, and I think we talked about this, I had a job for 2 years. I asked for a raise 4 times. They told me, nope, there's no money. On the 5th time, I go and tell them I'm quitting, and then all of a sudden there's an extra 10% raise for me. You didn't have it. So data is key on win backs and knowing when to call. You can't call too soon. You can't call too late. Understand. That's where you go back to give the agent time to look at the history.
Yep.
And open up with a story of, Lauren, I understand you had our product and you weren't happy with it. And yes, we didn't do a good job the last 5 times you called, but you were a value customer for 2 years. And I'm reaching out to let you know that, hey, we made a mistake and here's what we can do to get you back. Have a story.
Yep.
But if you don't have a story, there's no, you just can't smile and dial and hope. Hope is not a good strategy in win backs.
Yeah, I'll add one more point, which is segmentation. You want to segment your customers. You want to know who is worth winning back. Because I don't think every single customer should be treated the same. There are certain segments that definitely need to be prioritized higher than others with that personalized outreach. Like when you call me, you better know my history and the why I canceled the first place. You better read through those notes and start with the apology. So I think we have a customer, Michael, or a question that just came in. So Drew asked, in your opinion, how valuable is agent retention? And can you share insights about improving retention? And how does it relate to revenue generation, loss, or gain?
Everyone will tell you that every month goes on, your agent becomes better. The longer you have someone on the program, the better they get. It's just the reality of it. They understand the ins and outs, and just like anything else, you want to speak to someone with experience. Would you want to go to a doctor who's been for 3 months I got a knee replacement? I don't want the guy who's done this 3 months. I want the guy who's done this for 10, 15 years, right? So the longer you have someone sitting in that seat, in that program, they get better. The challenge is, what type of atmosphere are you creating for that person to stay? About what you talked about earlier, Lauren. What are we doing about culture? What are we doing to keep the person there? What kind of compensation program are we giving them? What type of recognition are we giving them? Their first year, their second year? Give them a raise? Did we give them a promotion? Did we give them a banner? Like, what are we doing to retain talent? Way too many often in our industry, people come and go because we didn't have the right culture for them.
Yep.
And I think it comes down to what you talked about earlier. Culture is everything, in my opinion, to keep people happy.
100%. 100%. The last section that we'll dive into, and then we'll turn to some Q&A here, is let's talk direct sales. So how would you turn your team of, let's say, 100 customer service agents, or would you, into a direct sales team? If you're thinking about direct sales and you want to launch something, how would you do it? Both inbound and outbound.
2 separate categories. If I'm launching an inbound sales team, I'm going to take those agents and I'm going to put them through some skills assessments. Mm-hmm. I'm going to have them meet with sales leaders and understand if they can do this. Inbound sales is much easier than outbound sales. Mm-hmm. So a lot of front end work, diagnostic, to see if they have the right profile, the right temperament, and they can close. Outbound, completely different animal. Like when I look at outbound agents, you got to have stones on your body because people are throwing things at you every day. And you have to understand that if I'm going to dial 60 to 120 times and I'm going to get hung up on 110, I may get 5, gatekeepers. I got to get past 1 and make a sale. Different makeup. You got to be tough to do outbound sales, and it's not for everyone. And you have to make sure that they understand law of averages and how it works. You have to understand that Man, I'm going to dial. I dialed from 8 this morning to 1 o'clock in the morning, and all I got was no, 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 no. How do I get motivated? On call number 55 and go, hey, Lauren, it's Michael from VXI. Click, and then finally I get you. I'm like, I don't have marbles in my mouth. So you have to go through a lot of vetting and training and coaching to get people ready for that. I equate it to, in the major leagues, the hardest position is being the closer, coming in a game with bases loaded and nobody out. If you don't have ice in your veins, it's not for you.
Yep.
If you're a hockey goalie in a shootout, and it was 4-4, you gave up 4 goals and now we're in a shootout, you got to wipe out those 4 goals.
Yep.
It's outbound is a different, I love outbound sellers. Because when you know when they're successful, they have no fear.
Yeah. And what infrastructure needs to be in place if you were going to launch either an outbound sales team or an inbound? What's key?
Outbound, you got to have the right telephony in place and the right technology. You have to make sure that, the caller IDs are in place, the do not calls are in place, the TCPAs are in place, all the legalities are in place. You got to make sure that you have the right data. Like, a lot of things happen on an outbound campaign. I've set up a lot of outbound campaigns in my life, and the ones that are successful are the ones that you put the right technology in place, definitely have the right CRM. And what you talked about, scripting, co-pilots these days, because you got to be fast on your feet. Outbound campaign, they make their decision in the first 5 or 10 seconds. In the first 5 or 10 seconds, they're going to decide if they're speaking to Lauren or not. If you got marbles in your mouth, they hang up on you.
I would also have a strong partnership with legal, because different geos have different regulations when it comes to outbound. EMEA, very different from the US. So knowing what those regulations are, making sure that you're abiding by them is also really, really key if you're thinking about direct sales. And then last but not least here, and then we'll turn to some questions. What kind of results are companies seeing who do both inbound and outbound direct sales? Can you share some stories?
You and I have built some very successful award-winning programs over the years. And I would say that the companies that are successful today all go into this with a winning strategy, a game plan. They understand that, a winning football coach, they usually have the first 20 to 25 plays scripted. They know what they're going to do when the game starts, and they practice this. I would tell anyone that wants to have a winning sales program that you have to have a structure in place, a support team in place. You got to have the right TA to hire people. You got to have the right trainers to hire to make sure that they're trained properly, the right leaders. Successful sales programs are not one. It takes a team of experts to do this. And that's what you need. You need a structured team that's going to put a winning program together, and you're fine. But the ones who we're going to, as we go, try to make this work, no, it doesn't work. So, you and I can do this all day, but to be fair to everyone, we said we really wouldn't go past 12:45, and it's 12:43.
Yep. So we can turn to the audience. If you guys have any questions for us, feel free to drop them in the comments here, and we will get to them. And Michael, as we're waiting for these questions, one final rapid fire for you.
Sure.
If a company could only do one thing tomorrow to start driving revenue from their contact center, what should it be?
Understand your cost per call and understand the average revenue that you can drive per interaction. So run a test, run an A/B multivariate test, take 10 care agents and then train your people, and then understand and look at the revenue that you can drive. Think about if you took 10 calls today and you're able to sell one, a subscription model of $129 a month, it's about $1,500 a year. Average customer stays on 27 months. That's going to pay for the 9 other calls that came in. So that's the way I would look at it.
It's just start. Just start, pilot, try, test, fail, try again. You just got to start.
If you have 100 care agents, find your best 10.
Yep.
Take those 10 and start looking at it. I've been doing this way too long, but I do know that the most successful companies that run contact centers sell on every interaction. Because think about this, and I'll end on this note. Everyone is in sales. I don't care who you are. Like, if you're in customer service, if you don't give that customer great service, they're not buying from you. So even though you're only in customer care, you still have to retain them and do a great job, or they're not coming back. They don't realize they're in sales, but they are.
Yep.
Every interaction, whether it's voice, chat, or email, represents an opportunity to keep the customer or lose the customer. So
Yep.
everyone is in sales, and you have to start thinking about your business that way, because we all know, whether you're going into a store, you're transacting online, or a chat, if you don't like that person, you're not coming back.
Yep.
So you buy from people you like and trust. And Lauren, it's been a pleasure. And to be fair to everybody, we said we'll end at 12:45 or at 12:46. So I thank everybody for joining us and really appreciate it. And you can get a hold of Lauren and I anytime on LinkedIn, or ping us or call us if you have our cell phones. And just really thanks everyone for listening.
Thanks so much.